Today, we're unpacking a massive, honestly incredibly complex debate surrounding youth social media regulations in the UK. It's a story that involves leading medical professionals, intense political pressure, and some pretty fundamental questions about how we protect young minds in a digital age. So, we're going to decode exactly what's happening right now using the very words and phrases dominating the headlines. Okay, let's just dive right into it. Is social media the new smoking? Now, when you first hear that, it sounds extreme, right? But it's an incredibly provocative comparison that's recently been made by a group of senior doctors in the UK. The medical community is actively using this specific phrase to signal a major, urgent shift in how we approach public safety. Think about it this way. Historically, there was a time when people generally didn't think smoking was a crisis or that driving without a seatbelt was, particularly dangerous. It took time for public attitudes about safety to shift to where they are today. Well, today, we're seeing a really similar shift with youth screen time. Now, doctors aren't saying scrolling on a phone has the exact same physical health impacts as inhaling tobacco smoke. Rather, they're arguing that social media is an equally critical health issue that society just needs to start taking just as seriously. It's all about a massive paradigm shift in how we view safety. To decode this paradigm shift, we're breaking this explainer down into three key phrases dominating the headlines. Number one, an overwhelming consensus. Number two, falling behind the curve. And number three, nothing is off the table. All right, let's start right at the beginning with section one, the problem, and an overwhelming consensus. So what does that actually mean? Well, a consensus is just a general agreement. It doesn't mean literally every single person on Earth agrees, but that an opinion is broadly accepted. When you add the word overwhelming, it emphasizes how incredibly strong that agreement is. It basically means pretty much everyone in a specific group is totally united on a decision. And we are seeing this build in the real world. A recent BBC News headline reports an overwhelming consensus that screen time harms children, according to top doctors. This isn't just a handful of concerned parents here. This is the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, representing senior top-tier doctors actively sounding the alarm. The language used here proves that while there might be a few dissenting voices, the vast, overwhelming majority of these medical professionals believe the harm is very real. So what exactly are these doctors seeing? They actually describe this issue as a unifying force for the medical profession. That alone tells you how seriously they're taking this. Multiple studies have directly linked heavy social media use to anxiety and poor well-being in young people. And look, while the science definitely gets nuanced, acknowledging that it's difficult to prove direct causation between app usage and specific mental health issues, the doctors emphasize that the correlations are just too strong to ignore. Which brings us to section two, the politics and falling behind the curve. You know the feeling? If you're behind the curve, you're basically reacting slower than everyone else. Imagine a graph showing a rising trend. If you don't change direction quickly enough to meet that rising line, you are behind the curve. In the context of our explainer today, this phrase is being used as a pretty sharp political criticism directed at UK leadership regarding digital safety. We can see this exact criticism playing out right now in the headlines. The Guardian reports that former UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting accused UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer of being behind the curve on an under-16 social media ban. Staying totally impartial here, we're just observing the internal political pressure. Streeting, who has actually also compared social media to smoking, is arguing that the current government is reacting way too slowly to the medical consensus we just talked about. To really grasp why critics are making that accusation, we need to look at the global landscape. Australia has already acted, outright banning social media apps for anyone under 16. Meanwhile, European countries like Greece and France are actively planning similar bans. Yet the UK is currently only considering measures to protect young people online. When you line up these actions globally, the contrast in speed and policy reaction becomes pretty undeniable. And that UK timeline? Well, it centers around one specific year, 2026. UK Technology Secretary Liz Kendall has stated that new measures to protect under-16s will be brought in by the end of 2026. Now, while the government is acting, for those critics who feel the UK is behind the global curve compared to places like Australia, waiting until 2026 just feels like a huge delay in addressing what doctors are calling an urgent health issue right now. And finally, we reach section three, the solutions, where nothing is off the table. You've probably heard this phrase before. In negotiations, if an option is off the table, it's out, done, no longer being considered.
Therefore, if nothing's off the table, it means every single possibility is still being openly discussed. The debate is wide open, and no final decisions have been locked in.
And this is exactly the government's official stance right now, according to broadcaster ITN. They are in a massive consultation phase. They're actively asking for opinions from tech experts, from charities, and importantly, from parents, on how to keep children safe online. By declaring that nothing is off the table, they're signaling a true willingness to explore everything from mild regulations to extreme legislative actions. So, what specific options are actually sitting on that table? At the most extreme end, we've got a total ban on social media apps for those under 16, mirroring Australia. But there are less extreme, highly targeted measures too. They're looking at late-night app curfews, meaning children simply wouldn't be able to log in after a certain hour. They're considering significantly stronger age verification checks to stop kids from easily bypassing age gates. And then there's the design of the apps themselves, stopping autoplay features and disabling infinite scroll. I want you to reflect on your own habits for a second. How easy is it to completely lose track of time when a feed just keeps scrolling infinitely? These proposed rules aim to break those exact design mechanisms. But as focused learners, we have to look at the entire picture impartially. It's not completely black and white. Campaigners and experts definitely do not all agree that a total ban is a magic bullet. Many young people themselves report that social media has a profoundly positive impact on their lives, helping them build communities and access support systems. Furthermore, some experts argue that outright bans simply won't work to prevent harm, because let's face it, tech-savvy teenagers will always find workarounds, which might just drive the activity underground rather than making it any safer. Which brings us to the end of our breakdown. Here is the big question. Is society truly behind the curve when it comes to this overwhelming medical consensus, or does an outright ban on youth social media take state intervention a step too far? It is a fascinating, delicate balance between public safety and digital freedom, and it's absolutely a debate the UK and honestly the whole world will be wrestling with intensely over the coming years. I hope this structured look at the facts and the language behind the headlines give you a clear, balanced understanding of what's going on. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.